Welcome to OnFinality's customer interview series, where we learn more from leaders in the blockchain space about how OnFinality's infrastructure helps them build the decentralized future faster. My name is Rob, head of growth at OnFinality. Today, it's my pleasure to have Teun from Litentry, a decentralized identity aggregator, to join us for a chat on how they're using OnFinality and everything in the DID space. Hey, mate, how's it going?
Pretty good. Thank you, Rob. Happy to be here.
Thanks. Can you, just to start with, tell our viewers more about Litentry and what problem you're trying to solve?
Yeah, very good question to start with. To explain a bit what Litentry essentially tries to solve, I probably have to go back a bit in time and give some context on why there is a certain problem that we now are able to solve. So I think in generally what has happened with the advent of blockchain, we started unbundling these centralized databases. So previously, all of our data, all of our transactions, all of our monetary and digital data was stored on a centralized server. It was controlled by a centralized entity. And then we started sharing that information or sharing those databases across nodes, across networks. And that unbundling of data also allowed us to have control over that data with the help of private keys, with the help of cryptography. So that's a very interesting event. And what is essentially happening now is we are owning our stores of value. We are owning our monkey pictures. We are owning so many new primitives, so many new digital assets, but we're not really owning our digital data yet. We are not 100% in control yet, but we are definitely able to. So we can now switch from this change of having major tech monopolies owning our data and using it as an advertisement product to sell to advertisers. We can change towards a future where we own our own data, since it is all based on blockchains, since it is all based on distributed networks. And we can tell, hey, this little piece of data, I would like to share that with a decentralized application. This little piece of data or these several data points, they make up my DAO history, they make up my NFT trading history, they make up my community contribution history. It's just that little piece of data that I would like to share to somebody else. And we are pretty good at owning our NFTs, owning our tokens, but we are not so good yet at owning our decentralized identity. Since some of the primitives, some of the standards that have to be enabled to do that just aren't mature yet, as well as the additional layer of privacy that would come in handy when you start owning your decentralized identity. Because what we're seeing at the moment is we have these super transparent blockchains. It's all pretty nice and cool. We can check what has happened on chain. We have this ultimate provenance. We can just prove that something happened. We can make sure that it can be checked on chain. Code is law. All of these things, but it's just a little bit too transparent when you're talking about yourself. When you go on a Tinder date, you're not gonna tell what skeletons you have in the closet on the first day. That's something that just comes on later when you feel comfortable to tell a bit more about yourself. And that's a principle we also want to apply in Web3 or the crypto industry. We need that additional layer of privacy between what you send out about your identity and the underlying distributed database or blockchain. So that's what Litentry is focusing on. On the one hand, we provide an environment where users are able to store all of their sensitive relationships between accounts. And now I'm talking about your Web2 accounts, such as Twitter, Discord, GitHub, Reddit, where a lot of your fragmented but tangible digital identity lives. You have profiles there. You have built up a personality there, often a pseudonymous personality if you're smart, if you are already maybe one step ahead. And then all of your Web3 accounts or your blockchains accounts, Ethereum, Polkadot, you name it, any type of those ledger-based accounts that show any of the transactions and the provenance that you have created in the Web3 world. We have created an environment where you can store and link all of those sensitive relationships together That might sound dangerous, but we make use of trusted execution technology, or trusted execution enclaves. What does that mean? It means that there is a specific enclave on a CPU that allows users to store their sensitive relationships in there, and that enclave cannot be tampered with from the outside. So it's kind of a black box that we cannot look into. Yes, we can pre-program it. Yes, we can show you the open source or public code, but only you decide what you put in, and you can check based on the code what the output will be. So that black box allows users to have complete control over this enclave, and it also allows users to issue a certain truth statement about their digital identity, whether Web 2 or Web 3, and prove that that statement was true, since the trusted execution environment has all the information to double check whether that statement is true, and then issue a credential that, for example, says, I held Polkadot since 2020. I've held Ethereum since 2016. I have a CryptoPunk somewhere. But you're not disclosing the actual location or the amount of value or specific high-resolution information that could dox you. So that's the additional layer of privacy that we want to add. And then those truth statements that I'm talking about, those are the standards or the new primitives that are emerging currently in the identity ecosystem. We see all of our competitors, all of our colleagues, as I prefer to call them, built on that same principle. It's called the verifiable credential. There's been a little bit of a tension between, like, what is it going to be? What are we focusing on? Is it going to be soul-bound tokens? Is it going to be verifiable credentials? I think both can perfectly live next to each other. But this verifiable credential standard will most likely become something that lives next to your NFTs, next to your tokens, inside your wallet, and that you will control to communicate your identity details. So that's a broad context of what Litentry is doing.
Amazing. A huge amount to unpack there, but really, really awesome answer. I have to say that I had a mate talk to me for years about Bitcoin, like back in the OG days, and I never really quite, I was intrigued by it, but I never really quite got it. And then I heard about Ethereum and the smart contracts piece, and then, you could do all these other things with data and stuff like that. And that's what really lit the fire in me, and I know that, there's many things that come off that, but there's a huge amount of inefficiency in many of today's systems because of this piece around, you have data, you want to share it, you don't want to share too much in certain kinds, and even some traditional companies that have your data also basically have no idea how to use it effectively, right? So I think it's most people can relate to that problem when they think about kind of the Facebooks and the Googles, but it also reaches into everything else, like when you're trying to, say, buy a house or get lending for a car or whatever it might be. There's discrete bits of data you may want to share with certain people along that pathway that this can just unlock so many opportunities, right?
Yeah, 100%. And the interesting part is that this mega engaging experience that we received in Web 2, these companies almost knew anything about us, so they could give us a completely tailored, completely customized experience. We're lacking that in Web 3. We don't know anything about our users apart from one address. And if the user has done some proper wallet hygiene, that address doesn't tell too much. If that address contains everything, then the application actually knows your complete Web 3 history, which is also not ideal. So we want to find that middle ground. We want to allow applications and projects, communities in Web 3 to get access to a certain amount of that identity of their users so that they can optimize the service, optimize the experience. So we hope that era of Web3 is coming, where the experience also becomes a lot more engaging based on privatized user identity data.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Can you explain for people more around, there are many use cases, but the ones that you're seeing most often, of course, like DeFi, and there's all sorts of other areas around communities and so on that I think are quite interesting. that Litentry is exploring?
Yeah, so we specifically within the identity industry, and it's really getting big. It's booming right now. We specifically focus on pseudonymous identity data. We're not as much heavily focused on KYC data, governmental data. We don't want to digitize your driver license. We don't want to digitize your ID. We want you to have that internet-ready identity. We want you to have an identity that allows you to show provenance, an identity that allows you to send money, to receive money, to collect reputation, all within that same handle or that same address or that same wallet. Most likely the wallet will become the entry point to Web3, or it is already, and it will just increase, just like the browser was the entry point to Web2 and Web1. So that's what we're focusing on, this pseudonymous identity that allows you to be a minority in some place with sometimes from the outside appear not such not such great characteristics, but still get that job because you've just got all of the credentials in your wallet. You can show off that you're an excellent developer, but you might not get hired through a traditional hiring process. So those internet-ready and pseudonymous economies is really something that we would like to unlock.
Awesome. One thing I thought was quite intriguing was the stake your identity feature. Are you able to share more about that?
Yeah, this is actually interesting. That feature, for us, it signals all of the social and economic innovations that can happen with identity. It's not 100% defined yet how that feature will roll out, but we are rolling out the closed alpha version of our front end product, the Identity Hub, next month. So that is the first interface to our protocol, the first interface to that trusted execution environment that I talked about, where users will be able to connect all of their accounts, issue their credentials, prove their identity, generate scores that just give a good non-discriminative picture of who they are. So then on top of that, we are exploring the different ways you could stake your identity. What could that mean, staking your identity? It could mean that you want to be available for certain projects. You are interested in a certain niche. You are happy to work with them. You let them know, hey, I have staked a little bit of my reputation. I am showing off that I have a certain interest in a niche. Why don't you come to me and let's together define what is the value of my identity? Let's go on that price discovery. What do you have to offer to me so that I would interact with your project? And that's a very interesting unlock, so to say, this price discovery of identity data, because now the user starts to realize, hey, my data is worth something. Why don't I go in a discussion with the application that wants to offer me something? Another way of identity staking is, okay, I stake my reputation. I prove that I am human. I prove that my identity is worth something. My pseudonymous reputation is worth something. If I show any malicious behavior, if I show any bot-like behavior, my stake might get slashed. Very similar to a proof of stake principle, where you want to have a stick behind the door, so to say, to just avoid any malicious behavior and incentivize good behavior. So these are, like, for us, identity staking, it's not 100% clear yet what that will be, but it shows a direction, or it shows new opportunities that will become available once self-sovereign ownership of identity data becomes a reality.
Awesome. Yeah. I mean, one thing I noticed in one of your presentations was that you're looking at integrating, Web 2 data such as Twitter or LinkedIn, that kind of thing. And I think it's been, I'm not sure whether it's part of your intention, but that type of thing around the ability for the individual to have a lot more control of their own history in terms of professional history. I think if you could do anything to beat LinkedIn, I would love it. I can't stand the thing. And it seems like such a terrible mechanism these days, especially in crypto, to verify whether someone's, suitable for a project and kind of the future of work, right? Like it's a global environment and everyone's still captured in these kind of little ecosystems talking nonsense on LinkedIn about different things. So yeah, I think this is, really interesting around that piece.
Yeah, 100%. I've heard that one a couple of times. We can completely imagine this use case where you have listed all of your credentials. Okay, you've completed some GitHub training. You have deployed many contracts. It's just 100% clear that you are fit for the job. Somebody doesn't even have to check your resume. They just see credential check. All the boxes are ticked. Bang, you are hired for the job. And within 5 minutes, you should be working on that project. Smart contract will take care of the payments and everything is just like that. That's a type of future everybody can imagine, and where all of the LinkedIn profile optimization shenanigans are just thrown out of the window because it's on chain what you did and what you did not do. So that will be interesting.
Yeah, super exciting. At the moment, there's a lot of noise in crypto with like regulation and all sorts of things happening from a government point of view. When we're talking about personal data, especially identity, and then this sort of bridge with the crypto universe, how does that affect Litentry, or are you guys having to navigate anything there, or is it on the flip side promote like a massive like advertisement for this because of all of sort of intrusion, if you will?
Yeah, a couple of things to unpack there. So on one hand, we see some like big macro changes in terms of like how to store your value, inflation of the dollar. There's a lot happening. Twitter is very hot these days, or crypto Twitter at least. And I think like I cannot say much about that. There's better sources to just inform you. I think Balaji is definitely one of the big speakers there. On the other hand, what I find very interesting and what is related to Litentry is just content generation through the help of artificial intelligence, deepfakes, machine-based content production. Like, I do see a need for once again, provenance of content. Like, is this content real? Who has produced it? Where does it come from? Proof that it is done or made or created by a human, that there is actually somebody behind the shell. I do see an opportunity there for identity data, for verifiable credentials. So in terms of macro trends, that could potentially be one that's a lot of players in the identity space could jump on and help with. But yeah, in general, we're in this weird phase, right, where all of the crypto native people they understand the ecosystem and they're playing around, but we need to bridge the chasm towards the majority. We need to really start focusing on optimizing the user experience, getting over the hurdle of storing your seed phrase. And before all of those like smooth UX implementations aren't there, as long as they aren't there, it's going to be hard to adopt the next horde. So that's something we're mostly focusing on, like how can we onboard the next 100,000 or million users with optimized user experience. Definitely within just communicating your identity data. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously, there's a massive education piece that needs to come to play, and I noticed that with this, also people need to be careful that they could have potentially multiple profiles, but that can still be linked, right? So as you mentioned before, there's a need for people to understand what, even if they've got these different accounts, that if they can be merged, and then people could perhaps have more information about that user than what they'd originally intended. So there's a lot of education there. How are you guys kind of getting the word out now about Litentry, or what's the focus for you guys in terms of use cases or people to bring on board?
So you can start like all at the bottom of the stack and like educate them about wallet hygiene. Don't use one account for everything. Keep certain niches split across wallets, and don't centralize all of your assets. That's one thing. But it's also about just making the user experience or creating a user experience that just how should I say it in a nice way? Like you want to avoid any stupidity. You want to avoid any foolishness by telling a user, hey, this credential might disclose too much of your identity. Why don't you lower the information of resolution? Why don't you just tell that there is a certain amount, that there is some assets, but not the value, not the location, not a high resolution of information that could get yourself doxed, or that could help data trackers or data miners to just bring all the dots together and then figure out who you are. So people who are really concerned about their privacy, who really want to live that pseudonymous life, they will have they will find a lot of benefit in what we have to offer. And then on the other hand, there's just so much terminology. There's so much concepts to get aware of when you start in Web3. So we also go down traditional road with everything along the spectrum, from presentations to memes to blog posts to Web3 beginner guides, interactive infrastructure models. You try to cater towards the whole population across a complete spectrum.
It's interesting you mentioned around kind of the UI piece in regards to education, and I think it's often forgotten, because I think there was an example a couple of weekends ago when there was the whole USDC unpegging event, and there was one transaction that I saw that was shared on Twitter, and I think it was someone swapped 2 million USDC in some lending pool, or it was some and it had it basically they ended up getting $10 back. They weren't aware of some things, and of course there was massive slippage, but no warnings to that person, like, hey, are you aware that this is what you're doing is got these sort of risks and so on. And I think that there's still this gap for people who are coming on board that around all of these issues, right? That hopefully you guys can play a big part in getting those people in and educating them and keeping them.
Hopefully. I always try to make the comparison, like, we don't know anymore what protocol our email client is using. Like, is it IPOP, is it IMAP? We have no clue anymore. It's just an abstraction, but underlying is some technology that is to us ancient almost. Like, that's the scenario where we need to go. Like, we want our to repeat this metaphor over and over again. We want our moms to use Web3 without knowing that they're using blockchains. We want them to play with that interface, but have all the warnings taken care of, all the precautions taken care of. That's the scenario where we're going. But you need endless years of innovation and optimization before we reach that. And there's good things happening, like account abstractions, multi-sigs. Like there's so many cool things happening that just still need that additional layer of UX, still need that additional layer of optimization before the masses will be able to experience it without all of the headaches.
Absolutely. I think one area around that idea of people sort of I guess still about how early we are is people fighting about different protocols, the tribalism between Solana or ETH or Polkadot or Avalanche or what have you. On OnFinality's side, we started out in Polkadot. We support a lot of the team's infrastructure within Polkadot, but more recently have been expanding into other ecosystems. And I noticed that Litentry also started within Polkadot, and your EVM compatible. Where else do you go from there? Because what you're trying to achieve is a massive endeavor that is, the problem is everywhere. How does your future look in regards to multi-chain?
Yeah. So we require specific partners. So not only OnFinality, but also Subquery, which is very closely related to OnFinality as a data indexer, as a data provider, and such partners who cover a multi-chain world are extremely crucial to us. So we receive the verifiable data from such indexers, and then we enter that data inside the verifiable credentials. So that's crucial, and the capabilities or the multi-chain capabilities of such indexers are something that we're looking at. We really try to focus on our core expertise, which is privatizing all of those sensitive accounts, making sure that the user is completely in control, and offering them an intuitive interface to issue these credentials. So yeah, data indexers are a big part there, and also start small, focus on the ecosystems where most of the activity is. Currently, that is still the Ethereum ecosystem. Polkadot there is so much developer activity, and I'm very, very curious how that at one point should explode into where the user activity should follow as well. So that will be curious. That those are the two main ecosystems that we're focusing on heavily, and then we'll try to build from there.
Awesome. How does it look like in the future if, say, there's a competitor that kind of owns Solana or something, and is there a way in which ultimately you would have partnerships with similar DID providers in that sense, that you guys could work together, or is this kind of like a zero-sum game that one DID provider is going to win them all?
Yeah, that's a very good question, and also one I break my head about often. So ideally, this standard, the verifiable credential, it's defined by the W3C. So like the ultimate internet nerds, the ones who shape the internet have proposed this standard, and we love that. I think everybody loves it. Ideally, we should all be able to read each other's credential. Ideally, it should be an interoperable standard, so I can talk with our colleagues Kilt within the Polkadot ecosystem, that we can talk with Disco, that we can talk with any of the major players who are adopting this credential standard. That's an ideal scenario. But at the same time, you also see strategies that are going towards lock-in of certain ecosystems or users, because every credential is slightly different. And there are luckily some initiatives from the industry that try to avoid a Tower of Babel scenario where everybody's using the same language but doesn't understand each other. I think that will be a challenge for the industry to solve. But there is initiatives underway. So ideally, we can just all use each other's credentials. And if you have used a DID provider on Solana and you want to import those credentials into Litentry, we should be able to read them and show like, hey, bang, on Solana, you've been pretty active and there's something to show. So I hope that future becomes reality.
Yeah, let's hope so. It makes sense.
Let's hope so.
I mean, obviously, you guys have been very successful so far. You've won a parachain auction. Obviously, very technically, complex product. Can you share about some of the challenges you've had to date and how you've overcome them?
Yeah, some of the challenges. Just blockchains are not centralized servers. they move slower. They are at the start not as stable. Like the complexity is higher. You're trying to create a distributed network, so delays are an issue for just building applications that are very user friendly. We sometimes struggle with, okay, this delay of having block confirmation. How does a user experience that? How do we optimize? How do we make a user aware that this is not just your quick application that runs in the same way as in Web 2. So those are some of the challenges. Anything that we're building is very new. It's all cutting edge tech. It's all never done before. So at the same time, there's a community that's often waiting to see results. I think that is a very common challenge that everybody's facing in the industry, that we're facing as well. Yeah.
Part of the fun as well, right?
Kind of, yeah, at times.
And what about what gets you most excited about? I mean, there's so many potential areas for Litentry. What for you personally is the most exciting thing going forward?
Yeah, I would love to see pseudonymous economies really taking off, like anonymity and just truly having the possibility to be a dog on the internet. Like you can be a dog on the internet and nobody can know. Like that would just be a world where there is more equality of opportunity, where everybody can just play around and try stuff without being judged, without having certain discrimination. Like pseudonymous economy is really taking hold and unlocking new opportunities for people who previously couldn't. From a philosophical standpoint, that would be the most interesting to see happening.
Yeah, super powerful. Be interesting to see where it all goes. And can you tell us more about how you found OnFinality and the benefits that it provides to Litentry?
Yeah, sure. So I think our team bumped into OnFinality when they were exploring the RPC endpoints on Polkadot.js. And then they figured out like, okay, there's some external expertise providers who can really help us optimize this setup, optimize our blockchain infrastructure, optimize the way we set up nodes, and provide the necessary infrastructure to run our parachain. I said it before, our core expertise is really focusing on privacy preserving infrastructure, and the core expertise of your team is in terms of providing the nodes, providing the necessary infrastructure to do that, to help others focus on theirs, and that really just saves us a lot of time. It helps us in not going into that one-on-one effort in guiding somebody to set up a collator or a node. You have that complete tutorial, almost, so to say, or that complete scripted, easy onboarding that just helps a lot of people. And in the future, we'll also likely open up the whitelist for more people to set up nodes, for more people to become a collator. So that's pretty exciting to us. And the way that OnFinality just eases, helps us to make that process a lot easier. Yeah.
Well, yeah, thanks for your support, and I look forward to seeing how we can help you in the next phases as you go forward. And how about for those who aren't in crypto or they're curious, do you have any advice on how they could get into the industry?
That's a good question. I think now, like, there's this quote. What is it? You become the 5 people you hang out the most with. So let's say that for the next month, you're going to hang out with Balaji, with Ryan Selkis, with just like the big brains of crypto. You figure out who they are, or you figure out who are those big brains for a certain niche that you're interested in, and hang out with them just 24/7. Like, listen to all of their podcasts, read every tweet, try to make a map of how they think, what their assumptions are, and pretty soon you're just ahead of a lot of people because you've completely immersed. I think a proper deep dive, clean out your schedule and just completely immerse yourself in a certain niche or expertise for a month. That's going to get you a long way. And then really start hustling in the Discords. I think that's another one. Just really jump in everywhere, reach out to everybody, build that pseudonymous reputation, and make a name for yourself once you know what you're talking about. I think that's what I would advise, or I actually am recommending to friends as well who try to break into the space.
Yeah, really good advice, especially immersing yourself in like crypto Twitter, right? That was one of the first things that was told to me as well. I was like, what's this Twitter stuff? I wasn't really, but then you get involved, and it's a huge amount of information that you just don't get anywhere else. Well, thanks for joining us today, Teun. It's been a pleasure to learn about Litentry and decentralized ID and the massive opportunities that lie ahead of you. If you'd like to learn more about Litentry, you can go to their website. And if you're a Web3 builder and want to get stuck in, perhaps run some nodes for Litentry, you're at the right place. As OnFinality is blockchain infrastructure made smarter. You can go to our website, app.onfinality.io, and check out all sorts of analytics tools and things we have for builders. Thanks again, Teun. Great to have you on, and all the best.
Yeah, this was awesome. Thank you.
Cheers.
Cheers.
See you.